We are back at Rook Center for the Deaf and Autistic Children, and with me here is Timothy, the founder of the center. Timothy, thank you for making time and appearing again on the show. As you know, this month is Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, and an issue that comes up a lot with cerebral palsy children and caregivers is matters abandonment. So I wanted us on this episode to just talk about it. What are some of the reasons that lead parents to, or caregivers to abandon these children? What that means for the child and the trauma that it has on the child. So you can introduce yourself before we begin.
My name is Timothy Liani. I'm the founder of Brook Center for the Deaf and Autistic Children, 14 years down the line. We take care of children with disabilities, and this month is Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, and straight to the point is cerebral palsy and the abandonment. It's very common because children with cerebral palsy have quite a lot. It's a bit intense to take care of them because they're children with muscle disabilities, but then it depends with the severity of the cerebral palsy, since there are also different types of cerebral palsy. We have hydrocephalus, we have microcephalus, and many more others. So apart from the severity, you realize that children who have mild conditions, moderate, and profound conditions. Those are children who are severely affected with the palsy. So these are children, sometimes they have troubles to move around, they have troubles to communicate, they have troubles to take care of themselves, and sometimes it's a bit overwhelming. At times some of them are also on very serious medication. Others are epileptic, convulsive disorders, and others have also additional autistic kind of elements.
In your 14 years of practice, have you dealt with cases of abandonment at the center?
Of course, because that's what we stand for. We are in between that child and that community and the situation and the trauma the child is in. So you realize it's very easy to abandon a child with cerebral palsy because they can't move, they can't follow you. The moment you leave them somewhere, they will have to be where they are, right? Unless you have to move them from that position to another position. But to abandon them is basically just carrying them and taking them somewhere and leaving them there. Or taking them to a hospital and deciding to leave the hospital through fake documents and so on and so forth. Others would even take them to school and just decide not to pick them up. Others will decide just to abandon them in the house. So out of the 14-year experience, we've encountered quite a lot, very diverse abandoned cases. And the most common one is being locked up in the house and people just walk away. Yeah, that is I think it's the youngest child we have around. He's about 3 years and was admitted here when he was about 2.5 years. So this is a child who was locked up in the house and the parent just decided to disappear. So the Nyumba Kumi, I think the chief, the local administrators, they're the people who rescued the child through the child protection unit, the children department. Then that's how the child ended up being here. Other cases we have is a parent just decides to fake documents through the registry of a hospital, takes the child to the ward and decides to walk away. Yes. Yeah, that was the most strange case because that's a child who took around 10 years in hospital because this parent just decided to take the child to the hospital using fake documents and decided to disappear. So ours was basically to rescue that child because you don't have to be in a hospital when you're not sick. You actually need to be in a home setting or somewhere where there are people who can take care of you, even if you're unable to take care of yourself. Other scenarios, a child taken to a daycare and people decide not to pick them up. Yes. So it ends up being a problem. That's an abandonment. it's trauma to the child. The people you leave the child with are new people, because children with cerebral palsy are so sensitive. Most of them use their ears and sometimes use their eyes. They trust people from the voice. They trust people from how you treat them. Yeah, they will know when you, that is someone who is talking about food, you know? So every time you pop in, that child will, knowing very well this is that person who does this, right? So if you shout, they become traumatized and they don't understand what's going on. So they will, the way you treat them is how they'll be able to relate with you. Yeah. And sometimes even if you have to change the caregivers, you realize it's a big problem with children who have cerebral palsy.
Because they want that.
Because they get used to those people and how they treat them. Yeah. So it becomes a bit difficult. So if you have to change a caregiver, then you have to do a lot of orientation. You have to ensure that there's a lot of bonding so that these people can start working together.
I know this goes without saying, but why are abandonment cases with children with cerebral palsy on the very high? What are some of the reasons that lead caregivers and parents to actually abandon these children?
Number one, there's very little information about cerebral palsy, and I think many people should make a lot of noise to ensure that, necessary noise to ensure that everybody is aware about cerebral palsy. It's just a child who is in a condition and needs to certain intervention so that that child can live like any other child. So there's very little information about cerebral palsy, because children with cerebral palsy normally recover. Even if they don't live like 100% their normal life, at some point, there are things they can do on their own. Yes, they can go to school, they can learn, they can move around if there's proper attention, proper therapy, and everybody coming together to ensure that they work on their weaknesses, to ensure that they uplift to reduce the disability. The other thing is there's a lot of myths, culture, and there's a lot of stereotype kind of mentality that people have about these children. And I think that is something that also needs an attention, where all of us need to understand through the information that this is not culture, this is not religion, this is not someone's wish, this is what happened, and this is what is supposed to be done. The other thing is there are constraints economically, and you realize children with cerebral palsy are a bit expensive to take care of them, because you realize this is a child who does not move. So this is a child who can't toilet. So they have to be on diapers. So someone tries to imagine that I have to buy about 5 diapers per day for an unknown period of time. So that becomes a bit traumatic for some of them. So they start to imagine and get to see how dependent is this situation on me, right? The other thing is you realize sometimes their medication is also very high and expensive. Most of the children with cerebral palsy have convulsive disorders, others are epileptic. So one child varies from the other, and the interventions that will go through this child is totally different from the interventions that will go through the other child. So you realize it's a bit expensive. It's an expensive exercise, it's an expensive course, and most people would really want to run away from it, putting in mind that the high cost of living apparently is there. And if they were doing that before, what about, like, let's say for instance, apparently, what is happening? You realize these are children who just die silently because someone will decide not to buy them medication. And that's how they will end. We don't have statistics of such kind of children in such kind of cases. It's a bit disturbing. And I think something needs to be done to ensure that if these are costs that are subsidized in one way or the other, then it will reduce that dependence or that high cost of a parent trying to think, maybe this could be a reason why I should abandon this child. The other thing is sometimes people go online and try to look for a lot of information that is very false, and it's not very much helpful to them. Some of them will even jump the gun, that the cerebral palsy children would not end up being better people. And I think most parents and most people having such children should form support groups, because these support groups support parents to find solutions for their children. Because what affected my child and my child overcame, then it can affect your child and your child can overcome. So we all have solutions. So it's upon us, the people who are stakeholders, to put those parents together in support groups to ensure that they create solutions amongst themselves.
In terms of now the children, because here we've talked about the perspective of the parents, even though it's wrong, there are those reasons that might drive them to abandon these children. But what happens to the children in terms of trauma?
It's very devastating for children. The fact that this is my mom, I'm used to my mother, I'm used to my father, then they are no longer there. The way they talk to me, the way I've just explained to you, that sometimes they get used to someone from how you relate to them. And this is my mom who gives me yogurt, and my mom is no longer there, so I have to go and meet people who are no longer going to understand that I need at least yogurt in a day, you know? So it becomes a bit how you touch them, how you treat them, how you talk to them. Sometimes maybe they might bump into people abusive, because some of them, the language we use, because children with cerebral palsy listen, and sometimes their mind is intact. It's so intact that they know what you're saying, they can hear what you're saying, so they can guess your attitude, right? So they're likely to react to you, right? Yeah, so in such a perspective, you realize such children are likely to start developing certain behaviors, like withdrawing, maybe not being actively participating or not interacting with people. So it causes trauma to children. It causes trauma, just like any other child. And it's very serious, because people with muscle disabilities, they have contractures. And once they get into fear or trauma, they get more contractures. So they like to get more contractures than even before. And when they are in a very relaxed environment, they are likely to relax themselves. And when they relax, their contractures can slightly start to relax. So in the event there's fear, there's abuse, there's pain, those children are likely to contract more. Yes.
So I'll probably want to know how the reception is like for some of the kids that you bring here, the ones who have been abandoned.
Yes.
But let's take a short break. We'll be right back.
The news that matters the most is the one that hits close to home. When disasters strike, we are there to inform you. When the bullets are flying, we tell you who's shooting and why. Reporting on your victories, your health, your money, your security, your past, present, and future. We are interested in telling the stories of creativity, hard work, and resilience that you are known for.
That is our job. This is my job. My name is Victor Muyakane, and it's my honor to bring you this news this way every Thursday night on the home of Untold Stories.
Katika majengo haya, hapa ndipo sheria zinapotungwa na zinapopakuliwa. Nitakuletea viongozi mbalimbali, mirengo mbalimbali, wote kwa pamoja wakipika na kupakua. Tutawapa nafasi kuweza kuangazia changamoto na mafanikio ya ugatuzi katika ukumbi wa siasa kila siku ya Jumanne kuanzia saa 1 kamili na kuendelea.
Welcome back. Timothy, before the break, we were talking about some of the kids that you've been able to rescue, and you have them here at the center. what are some of the characteristics that you see in them when you first bring them, and does it get better? Do they get to a point where they are relaxed, or is it that this trauma is never ending?
Yeah, children abandoned who have cerebral palsy have trauma. Yeah. One of the cases we have is, this is a child who doesn't want touch. Yeah. So please just don't touch me. When you try to touch them, they scream, you know. So these are children, this is a child probably who was facing abuse. So maybe this is a child who is trying to imagine, I think the next thing is I'm going to be pinched, or I'm going to be beaten up, or someone is going to shout at me or yell at me. So we have to use a lot of therapeutic kind of interventions and express a lot of love to ensure that we try and change that narrative. Because this is already a child who is trying to avoid touch. Don't touch me, because I think when you touch me, you're a harmful person. Yeah. And then in the first place, you realize this is a voice. I'm not used to this voice. I can't defend myself. I can't move. I can't talk. I can't sit. I can't run. Please don't touch me. Right? Yeah, so you realize you have to talk to them. And sometimes it's devastating when you don't know their names, because their mothers used to call them their names. Yeah. And it's a bit tragic that I have to give them a name, because every child has a right to a name. It's a fundamental right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. The African Charter on Rights of Children talks about every child should have a name. So the government states through the best practices that we must give children names. But there are guidelines to give names. So unfortunately, I have to give them a name that is contrary to the name the child is used to. So for that child to start adopting to that name is a bit difficult. And they're likely to repel through screaming, trying to reject the interventions you're trying to put in place, until you start using very lucrative kind of styles, like you bringing nice things to their mouth while you mention that name, until they get used to these good things related to this name. So it takes a while. It takes a while, and it's a bit disturbing, because it disturbs us. Yeah. How do I start calling this child a name the child is not used to? But I have to give that child a name. So I'm tied in between. Yeah. It's in between, and I have to make a choice. So I have no alternative other than giving that child a name.
So the question is, and I'm sure I am wondering, and I'm sure my viewers are wondering, do they actually get to a point that they accept the name and they accept that, you know, this is now a safe space, I'm not being abused here, I can now relax, I can now grow, I can now feed, I can now...
Yep, yes. How you treat them. This is a good thing, this is a nice thing. I'm giving you yogurt, I'm giving you juice, I'm giving you a fruit. I call that name. I relate you to this good thing. And that is how you create the connection between the name, you, and the child. Yes. And you have to be a bit caring, you know, how you touch them, how you talk to them. Sometimes even massaging them. You have to massage them, give them a tender touch so that you can create that connection. Yeah. It might take a while, but it's possible. It has worked. Yes.
So, another thing is, what happens to these children? They've been abandoned, they're rescued, they're at the center, but then you also cannot stay with a child forever. So what happens to them?
Yeah, I think we have an exit strategy. Yeah, our exit strategy varies from one child to the other. Of course, every child has their own SWOT analysis, their strengths, their weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So each and every child is being taken through this. And, you know, of course, a SWOT analysis assessment must come along with a treatment plan that should give us a way, how should that child exit? There are different forms of exit. One could be referral. Maybe that child, we have reduced disability completely, so that child is no longer having more disabilities. So this is a child who can reintegrate to other community or to other inclusive kind of learning settings, and so on and so forth. Others would find their parents, of course, and such children, when they come in, of course, we have to prepare what we call the case history of that child through the department. Then there are court orders and care orders, so that we can be able to take care of these children properly. And then after that, if at all we bump into the parent, Then we have to do what we call a court revocation. So when we do a court revocation, it means that child should be taken, reintegrated back to the family. Yeah, we've had such cases, and it's been wonderful. Yes, and apart from that, we also have alternative forms of care, family care, which we practice, mostly we practice foster care, that people are still a bit skeptical about disability, and we try to talk to them to understand. So foster care is what we practice apparently. So people pick, they get children and become parents temporarily for a period of time stipulated by the government. And that's how it is. From one parent goes to the other parent, and that is how that child starts living in families.
You've talked about revocation and those kids being taken back to their families. Are there families that after being maybe made aware of the situation, they take back their children?
Yes. Once they get more information, they see that child transform and become a better person, then they want their child back. Okay. Yeah, they bump into this child in school, they bump into this child in a psychiatric pediatric clinic, and they would say, I know the father of this child, I know the mother of this child. So we start the process, because that's what we're looking for. Yeah.
Are there consequences to abandoning your child? I mean, this is not a good thing for a parent to do so. Before letting them have the children back, are there consequences to it, to the action?
Of course, there should be consequences, but I haven't seen any consequence being taken care of. You know, we take care of children, and once their parent is found, then it's the role of the government and other stakeholders to pick up that matter, because ours is to take care of the child. So once you summon me to take that child back to the courts because you want to revoke the court order, then I think there must have been a home visit, there must have been another case history, and it shows very well that this child is going to be safe back there. It's not an easy process to revoke a court order. That's what I know. To revoke, and that process to initiating it back, it's not very easy. And most people are scared to come back because of the consequences. But I have never seen someone put behind bars for doing that. Yeah, we've done quite a number of revocation. And the only thing that happens is we are ordered by the courts to hand over the child back to the family. Because the government apparently wants the children back to families. That's why I think there are no consequences a lot. Yeah. But I think it's a bit dangerous also, because if that parent was abusive, then he's a threat to justice.
Absolutely.
Yes, he's a threat to justice.
And also even just the situation whereby you are abandoning your own child, and then you are leaving them, you know, with no precautions in mind. You know, anything could happen to that child, and then years later just taking them back. I feel like it's unfair to the child, to the society.
It's unfair to the justice, especially justice to a child. Yeah, it's unfair. But unfortunately, I think the best place to be is at home. The best place to be is at home. So we are also, I think everyone is also in between. Being in an institution or being at home. Yes. So at home is best. So once we find these are people who are saying, now we can accept. Because the only thing, for that process to be initiated, you have to ensure you talk to them, you make them understand, and you let them know these were the milestones. The child has achieved the milestones and the child is a better person. Sometimes they bump into them when they're talking. Sometimes they bump into them when they're in school, you know. So they become happy, and they want to join back to, they want their child to join back the family. Yes.
Consequently, following up on the question I've just asked on the consequences, do you think the government is doing enough in terms of children with cerebral palsy?
The government needs to pull up its socks. Very little is being done. Yeah. Number one, I think these are children who need assistive devices. Like for instance, if I may ask you, did you pay to walk into this compound? No. Then why are you charging a wheelchair? A simple question. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Why should someone have a shop to sell something that should enable someone to walk around? Why should someone sell something to enable someone to hear what the world is talking about? If the child has hearing loss, they have cerebral palsy, they have hearing loss, they cannot be able to move from one place to the other, then why are we having barriers? So the government needs to put this to zero rating kind of charges. And then why are you making their medication difficult? These are children, you know very well, they're epileptic. I have to take medication before I sleep. If I converse 2 or 3 times, I might lose my life. Then why are you charging? We should make this very accessible. We should make this very cheap. If anything, it should be free. Right? Yeah, it should be free, and it should be standardized. So that a child in a certain village, in Isiolo, and a child in Nairobi, and a child in Kisumu, a child in Murang'a, or a child in Mombasa, should have a standardized price of certain medication. But when the prices skyrocket, then it means there's double standards, and you don't understand what's really happening. Yeah, so I think the government should really make their schools free. Yeah, they should make their schools free. They're so expensive and they're not accessible. Right? Yeah. And the other thing, I think we should make institutions, structures, and institutions that offer services to such children, like Kenya Institute of Special Education, should be devolved completely. So that if you have an MCS office, there's a therapy center just next to it. So that these children can be able to access therapy in the easiest way possible, because therapy is like food to them. If they don't get therapy, then they have to really lag behind. Yes.
Finally, as we wrap up, what is your message now that we are commemorating Cerebral Palsy Month this month? And then if people want to maybe be part of the organization, you know, assist in one way or another, how can they find you?
I think what we need to do is, I remember the words of Nelson Mandela, that it takes a whole community to raise up a child. And it's about all of us. Yes, it's about all of us. We should put our efforts together to raise up our children. And irrespective of their ability, every child is able to achieve milestones. Yes, so children with cerebral palsy are like any other children. They can achieve milestones, and it's very easy for them to live a meaningful life and build our country. They can walk, they can go to school, and they can take care of themselves in any way possible. Reaching on us, I think you can check our Facebook page, Brooks Center for the Deaf and Autistic Children. You can also check our Twitter, our Instagram, and our Facebook page. Okay. Yes, Brooks Center.
Do you have a contact?
Yes.